We're going to get right to it. Thank you guys for listening. energieslovepodcast.com. Go follow us, go like, go subscribe, go share, do all that good stuff with the show, with the podcast. So if you're a fan of the podcast, you've been listening for a while, I would love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what you enjoy about the show, what you like, what you don't like maybe. Go to our website and you'll see the tab for contacting the podcast and shoot us an email. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you everybody for tuning in and listening to the podcast. This episode is brought to you by the coolest little metaphysical shop in Utah, As Above, So Below. They're located in Roy, Utah, and if you don't know where that is, by all means, just get on your phone and find it. You can also find all their information through our website. Just click on sponsors and you'll see the link for As Above, So Below. So if you're on a spiritual journey, if you're on your own path and you are in need of guidance, advice, recommendations as far as what to incorporate, what to use, maybe you're into crystals, maybe you're into tarot cards, whatever it may be, you can find all of those things and more at As Above, So Below. It's a fun shop. It's a cool shop. It's got great energy there. They've got amazing people there on a regular basis. They're continually hosting classes and events. Coming up on August 13th, Sunday, August 13th, is going to be their fall metaphysical fair. This is going to be an all-day event from 10 to 7. It's a great opportunity to get outside and bask in some of the amazing things that they're going to have there at As Above, So Below, as well as check out the shop if you've never checked out the shop before. So go to their Facebook page. You can click on the events tab, which will then show you all the things that they do at As Above, So Below, and then find the event for August 13th. Like I said, it's going to be their fall metaphysical fair. It's a great opportunity to come out and support the shop as well as get some good energy work done, buy some crystals, some jewelry, all sorts of good stuff. Go show them some love. On today's episode, I had the wonderful honor and privilege of speaking with Shera Konen. So I met Shera a couple years ago. She came out to Utah and I got to meet her in person. She's a really, really neat, interesting lady. Shera is the casting director for Warm Springs Productions. They're responsible for shows like Mountain Men, which is on the History Channel, Legends and Lies, Log Cabin Living, Beach Hunters. They've got a lot of different shows on a lot of different networks. And Shera, like I said, she's the casting director. So she's got the fun job of going out and meeting a bunch of different people and finding the right person for the show that they're producing. So she's got a lot of really fun stories, a lot of really fun insight. She's just a really fun, chill lady. And we had a great time chatting on the podcast. We had the fun opportunity of recording the show in Bozeman, Montana. My wife and I took a trip up there recently, and Shera came out and met us, and we just had a wonderful, wonderful time. As always, we got into a lot of really deep spiritual stuff, which was kind of surprising, but at the same time, it wasn't for me because I know that she's a really connected lady. Shera shared some great stories, some really good insight, and a different perspective, I think, than sometimes that we kind of talk about or comes up on the show. So if you want to find out more about her and Warm Springs Productions and the shows that they produce and where, I mean, I'm sure you've watched some of them at some point because they're on all the big major networks, but you can go to warmsprings.tv. That's their website, and see all the shows that they produce, and Shera is responsible for casting all of those shows. Now everybody sit back, relax, turn it up, push play, and enjoy this episode with Shera Konen. Here we go.
You're listening to the Energy is Love podcast.
Energy is love.
The Energy is the Love podcast.
The Energy is Love podcast.
Energy is love.
The Energy is Love podcast.
The podcast for the universe.
The Energy is Love podcast.
Well, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
This is it.
Yep. I'm ready.
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm well. I'm doing well.
The first thing I want you to do is I want you to pronounce your name for me.
My name is Shera Konen.
Okay. I'm going to screw it up.
That's okay.
It's so
That's
funny
okay.
because when I met you the first time, I was thinking about that on the way up here. It was like 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But I could never get your name right. And it drove me nuts.
Well, and you're not alone. I'm Cheryl, Sharon, Sherry, whatever. I kind of answer to any of those things.
Yeah. So how long have you lived in Montana?
Born and raised. Lived here for 51 years. So I was born in Butte, Montana, and lived here my whole life.
Do you love it?
I love it. Yeah.
We've never been before. Well, we've been through Montana, and like last year we went to Yellowstone and we popped into, is it Gardner?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so we've been, in portions of it, but this is like the first time that we've ever spent a significant amount of time here, and it's only a few days, but
And you're here for perfect weather.
yeah, it's not bad. It's very nice.
Yeah. I actually live just outside of Yellowstone Park.
Really?
So, yeah.
We drove through West Yellowstone and then came down through whatever that canyon, that area, that place is.
Gallatin Canyon.
Yes.
Yes.
And it was so beautiful.
So pretty.
Like
yeah.
there was a storm that had come in and there was a little bit of rain and like the mist that was covering trees and all sorts of stuff. It was really, really pretty.
Did you see any wildlife?
No, we didn't.
Dang it.
We were hoping. I kept my eyes out, but
Yeah, that's kind of a mecca for bighorn sheep.
Really?
So usually you run into some on the roads. Or, well, literally, hopefully not run into them, but they're there.
I recently saw too that you went to Alaska.
Yeah.
I want to hear about that.
So I've been to Alaska 3 times this year. And my most recent time, I was on the coastal areas in Alaska. So I landed in Anchorage and drove the coast to Homer, Seward, that whole area, Hope, Alaska. And I was just doing some work for a TV production that we have called Mountain Men on History Channel. And it's amazingly beautiful. I mean, Montana is really beautiful. Alaska is bigger than life. I mean, it's just huge. And then I was fortunate enough to get to go to Juneau, which is amazing, and watch whales and do all of these amazing things. And I was actually going to fly to the Aleutian Islands, but the volcanoes are erupting.
Really?
Yeah. And so I didn't want to get stuck there, so I didn't go.
Because it affects like air travel and everything like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. They said that if the volcanoes are erupting that day, it'll cancel the flights. And I was flying into Sandpoint, and the flights the prior day had been canceled. So yeah, I wanted to get home at some point.
So when people think about, like for me personally, when I think about Montana and then I think about Alaska, I've never been up to Alaska, and one day I'm hopefully we'll be able to go. But I think that people kind of have, unless they're really knowledgeable or educated, or obviously they've visited, but I think that they kind of have a similar, I don't know if perception's the right word or not, but do you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
Like it's outdoors, it's nature, it's mountains, it's remote, there's big open spaces.
Right.
But how different is Alaska?
You know, it's just a different world. Montana is it is very outdoor oriented, and it's a little bit more maybe urban than Alaska is. A lot more, to me, it felt very much more rural, and everything is so far away. Like you think, I'm going to drive to Homer, it'll be a quick drive, and it's 5 hours, and not only that, but the speed limit's not 80 in Alaska.
Yeah.
It's
what is it?
55.
Really?
Yeah. I can't do that. So anyway, everything just takes so long, and but the mountains are bigger, and the people are bigger than life, and there's just some real differences, and especially if you get into the real northernmost areas like Barrow, Alaska, and Prudhoe Bay. For one thing, it's a cold that I've never felt, and Montana gets cold, but when you get out and it literally takes the breath out of your lungs, it's a different breed of cat, so everything about it seems to me to be like Montana on steroids.
Yeah.
It's just, whoa, huge. Like you come around a corner and there's mountains jutting out of the ocean. We don't have that here. We have lakes. It's just a different world. We don't have whales. We don't have, sea lions, and it's cool. It's a little bit of everything, because there are parts in Girdwood, Alaska, which is a ski resort town. It looked like a jungle. It looked like Waipio Valley in Hawaii. It's just this crazy mix of, kind of rainforesty areas and ocean, and, it's different. Yeah, it's beautiful.
How long were you there for?
Collectively, I guess about 3.5 weeks.
That's a long time.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time there this year. Yeah, and I love every day of it. Yeah. Juneau's very urban and hip, and there's great places to eat, and there's cool shopping, and it feels like, like Taos, New Mexico, or like Seattle, or, something, Austin, Texas. It's very kind of being rejuvenated, and there's a real young crowd that lives there, and there's a music scene and good food, and So there's a little bit of everything.
Does it still feel rural to us in a sense too, like when you're in the city?
Juneau feels, actually, for being smaller, it is the capital, but for being smaller than Anchorage or Fairbanks or, some of those, it feels more urban.
Yeah.
Definitely. It's just got that more, and maybe it's because it's tourist season too, but it felt like a little more hip. Yeah. I love it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So tell people about, because it's Warm Springs Production, right?
Yep.
How long have you worked for them?
So I've been working for Warm Springs Productions for about 6.5 years. Yeah. So prior to that, I actually sold resort real estate up in Big Sky, Montana, which you would have passed on your way through the Gallatin Gateway. And there I was fortunate enough to meet the founder of Warm Springs Productions, who, when they started, we started out in the outdoor and sportsman's channel world. And the founder of the company actually had a show on the outdoor channel called The Pierce Project. And he fell in love with the television business then. And when he was sold the other businesses that he had his hands in, he decided to open a production company. And for like really legit reasons, like he saw that a lot of production companies don't have, they don't actually hire employees. They don't have insurance. They don't have any benefits. They don't have retirements. They're all freelancers. And so he decided that if he was going to do it, he wanted to open a company and actually hire people and give them a foundation and give them security. And that's exactly what he did. And I was fortunate enough to get on.
So you didn't have any experience before that in regards to like
None.
production and TV,
None.
anything like that?
My whole background was in real estate and in interior design. So completely foreign.
That's a big, like...
You know what, actually, so I'm the casting director for the company. So actually it is not a leap because it's a people job.
Mm-hmm.
So real estate is about people and feeling comfortable with people and associating with people of every demographic. And what I do is pretty much exactly the same thing, except that I get to travel to do it. They don't come to me. So it's not really a leap. And honestly, in the film and television world, there's such specialty jobs. There's, editors and production assistants and story producers and all of these things that require such a specialized skill set. And I would fail miserably at any of those because I don't have that skill set. I was fortunate enough to get into casting, which there's no training for that. There's no casting school, or there's no training programs and weekend, educational opportunities you can take. So it's a people job. Yeah. So
and
that's
you like
what
it,
I do.
obviously, right?
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's one of the, like when you started it, what was one of the things that you didn't necessarily realize was going to come out of it? Do you know what I mean? Either some aspect or some experience or something like that.
Well, when I very first started, it was really funny because when I started with the company, like I said, I had worked with the founder of the company before in real estate. I was his real estate agent in Big Sky. And so when he asked me to come on, we weren't even really sure what I was going to do because the production company was just getting started. And so he said, well, what do you think about, do you want to go find some people? And I was like, all right, yeah, why not? Let's do it. So I went out, and my first assignment was looking for gun traders for a show that we had, gun traders. And so I went to a bunch of gun shows and, just started searching out people. And I think the biggest surprise to me is how people want to tell you their story.
Yeah.
They do. And so many people in the world have no opportunity to be heard. And so if somebody's interested in them, and especially in like remote areas or kind of jobs or people that kind of live in the background a little bit, and they feel unseen, and for somebody to actually come to them and ask them, like, tell me your story, they are beside themselves. And that's the most rewarding thing to me, is because it's fascinating, and people miss out on so many amazing people because they don't ask.
Yeah.
And so I think that's been the biggest reward. And the second biggest reward to me is, I'll go on an assignment and I'll meet a bunch of people, and we might never ever do anything with them, but then I feel like I stay in touch with people, and I feel like I've made friends all over the country, including you.
Yeah.
And so that's the amazing thing to me, is that I get paid to do that.
I found that with the podcast where I'll talk to people sometimes and they're like, well, what would I talk about? Like, I don't want to come on the show because, like, why do you want to talk to me? Like, and I'm like, trust me, you're interesting.
Right.
Like, you have a story to
Right.
tell. You have worth that people want to hear and want to, do you know what I mean? You have things that people will benefit from.
Right.
And so it's real similar to a sense in that aspect where I love being able to talk to the wide variety of people that I get to talk to.
Right.
And share their story and their insight. And undoubtedly, do you know what I mean? People walk away from listening to that episode and have little tidbits of information and insight from that person who initially thought that they were like, you know, just boring old me. Why would you want to talk to me?
Right. And I think the beauty in it too is that they're surprised themselves. I think sometimes when they start talking and then they're like, whoa, I am kind of interesting, you know? And so to watch people, and that's the other beauty, is to take somebody that, you know, literally, you know, traveling to, say, Barrow, Alaska, you know, it's really special to get to go there, because I would have never had the opportunity, or, you know, I wouldn't even have thought of it.
Is it like really remote?
It's the northernmost point. It's on the Arctic. It warms up in the summer. They said it gets a warm 40, you know, and it's beautiful. The sun has a ring around it like I can't even describe to you when you're there. It's just this amazing place, but nobody's there. You know, nobody goes there for, and so the people, I think you lose yourself in that. You know, you just get stuck in a little circle and you don't understand that there even would be an outside interest. And so it's, you know, it's just fascinating to me to go in and, you know, I drop into a place with no preconceived notions of what I'm going to find, no appointments set up, no really direction. It's just a matter of just kind of boots on the ground, when that's what we call it, boots on the ground casting. So I'll stop in a grocery store or the Chamber of Commerce or, you know, just whatever it is, and just start digging. And people are so helpful. If they're not the person you're looking for, they definitely want to be the person that finds the person you're looking for. So I've just found out that people are so amazingly willing to give. You know, they just want to tell you their stories. And I also get to like drop into a place like that. And I don't drop in and then drive to a convention center and have meetings for a week and then leave. I actually get to drop in, drive the whole area. I mean, I drove every street in Barrow, Alaska, and to actually get to see a place and to dive into it and really see how people live and find out that everybody wants to give you something. Everybody wanted to give me a jar of fermented whale blubber, you know, and it's a treat. Like it was very generous of them, because it's their sustenance. It's what they, you know, and they whale during whaling season, and they cut up these whales for the entire village. And so it's a shared thing. You know, there's like 3 whaling captains, and they go out and it's this week-long venture, and they got 19 whales in Barrow, Alaska last year.
Wow.
They process them, they have this huge celebration, and then they all share it. And yet I show up and they want to give it to me. They, you know, they want me to take some home with me. And, you know, and it's amazing. It's cool.
Is that how you do most of the casting for stuff, is just showing up? Or do you ever have like, you know, is there another aspect where because I'm listening to that and I think it's fascinating. I didn't realize that that's what I mean, I knew you were a casting director, but I didn't realize that that's how you did it. But I think the fascinating part is like the randomness where, do you know what I mean? There is that one person that's out there waiting for you, in a sense that it's just a matter of you have to find them and flip over the rocks and, you know, seek out, and then eventually you find that perfect ideal person that's exactly what you were looking for.
And it's always so serendipitous how it happens. You know, it'll be just a very strange coincidence. Oh, so for instance, when I was in Homer, Alaska this last week, I guess, I was looking for very specific characters for Mountain Men on History Channel, and I had a couple of names that people had given me that I was trying to track down, and you know, it's fishing season, so a lot of them are commercial fishermen. They're out, so I stopped in this little restaurant to connect to Wi-Fi for a minute and to make a few phone calls and grab something to eat. And 2 gentlemen walk in that are, I can tell they're probably commercial fishermen, and start talking to them. Turns out they're the most fascinating. They've been on a show before in just a, you know, small piece, and they know everything, the entire area, and they were so willing to help. And so you start talking to them, and, turns out he's from Livingston, Montana. He graduated with the girl I work with, and it's such a small world. Funny story about that too. So I went again to Barrow, Alaska, and, so I'm holed up in this place, and I'm going out very selectively because it's cold. Like, it is cold.
You got to plan the trip out.
Yeah, I had to get and warm my car up, plug it in. I was just like, okay. So when I had to go out, it was very planned. And I get a message from a relative of mine that's like, hey, I think we have a cousin that lives in Barrow, Alaska. Well, at least he did when I, after he graduated from high school, he moved to Barrow, Alaska. And so I start digging around just to see if he's still there. And I come up with his and his wife's name, and I call, and his wife actually hung up on me twice. I don't know. She thought I was a solicitor. And finally, I get on, I'm like, hey, please don't hang up. Please don't hang up. Do you know blah, blah, blah from Montana? And she goes, yes. What does this have to do with? I'm like, I'm family. I'm a cousin. And so I actually got to meet. They've lived there. He was the fire chief in Barrow, Alaska for 40 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And you had never met him before?
Never even heard of him. No. And that's happened like so many times. It's just like, it's very, very serendipitous. So not only do you get to do what you love and find people for TV shows, but you find out there's also another reason why you were there.
Yes.
And for whatever, path you're on, boom, you got to meet family, and got to tell my family, hey, they're great. They're doing good. They're retired now and loving life. And his wife actually is one of the whaling captains.
Oh, wow.
So it was just this most ridiculous serendipitous moment and it seems to happen a lot.
Did you have experience like that? Have you kind of had that your whole life to a certain extent?
Yeah, I think so. It's happened a lot, and I don't know, it's just because my family's so huge that, they're everywhere. But yeah, very serendipitous things like that happen all the time. And so
have you always had awareness of it?
Yes. Well, other people have always had awareness of it. Another very funny story. I was just a month prior to that, I was in Montana, in Babb, Montana, which I hadn't been to, looking for, again, mountain men. And I went to interview this family, and they're Blackfeet Indian. And we just started talking, and they're adorable. And I felt very close to them from the very beginning. And the more and more we talked about it, we started talking about family history and where we came from. And he says to me, well, yeah, you're from Butte, Montana, and I know so-and-so in Butte, Montana. And we started making this connection. And then he tells me about his family that migrated from Canada. Their maiden name was Choquette, which is my maiden name. And so we trace this back, and we are distant relatives to Blackfeet Indian that live in Babb, Montana. And so that happened a month, and then a month later I was in Barrow, and it happened again. So yeah, it's fascinating. And all my friends were like, I cannot wait for you to go to Chinatown. I can't wait. So
we always think that you're right where you're supposed to be.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Regardless of how the situation may seem, or even when it's shitty or when it's wonderful, you're always right where you're supposed to be. And I love that you have like awareness of that, do you know what I mean? And recognition of it. And even sometimes it's challenging in the moment to recognize it. A lot of times it's, after the fact where you kind of sit back and put all the pieces together and realize, oh my gosh, had I not, maybe my flight got delayed, or, if I hadn't have turned left instead of right, or whatever the case may be.
Right.
But it always takes you wherever you need to go.
Yep.
Do you feel any other connection? Because we're going to go off on a tangent here.
Okay, absolutely. I'm good on tangents, yeah.
Do you ever feel any other connection to... Because I believe that's the universe spinning and connecting and all interconnected and all the wonderful stuff that it does. Do you ever feel any other sort of strong connection to things like that? Absolutely.
Yeah. And by the way, that is my mantra. Every single day I say I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, and only good things happen to me. And I believe that for the most part, that's really true. That is true. And even things that, like you said, they don't seem good in the moment, they come out exactly how they're supposed to come out, if you just kind of quit fighting life. But yes, I've always, I feel very in touch with the present, the past. I've always spoken to grandparents that have passed, and so I've always felt very, very connected with that. And I feel like my children are really, really connected with the intuitive world, and so we talk about it all the time, and we're really open to it.
When you say you talk to your grandparents, do you feel like it's just a way of soothing yourself and you talk to them, or do you feel a closeness to them and some sort of interaction in a sense?
Absolutely feel some interaction. And I'll tell you a really funny story about that. So there was an intuitive that came to Butte, Montana a week ago because a friend of mine's son had passed really tragically 2 years ago. And he started reaching out to this intuitive who's not even in the area, to the point where she finally reached out to his family. Like, hey, I need to talk to you. Keegan is coming and talking to me, and I felt like there's some things I need to tell you. So anyway, we have this memorial volleyball tournament for him every year, and she came in this year for it. And so I just went to talk to her because, well, I love it. I believe really strongly that sometimes you need somebody to connect you if you're not. And so she told me, she said, no, there's somebody here with you, and his name is Frank. And so my cousin Frank, who they called us kissing cousins when we were little, had passed away when he was 27 years old. And I have talked to intuitives many, many times, and he has never been the person that, came, and I wasn't thinking about it. And if he hadn't actually told her a name, I would not have picked it up. I wouldn't have picked it up. I wouldn't have known who she was talking about. But anyway, she said, he knew you were coming today, and so yesterday he left you a feather. And it was the craziest thing because my daughter and I were running the day before, and we found a feather on the walking path that was like, we're like, is this from a pterodactyl? What is it? It was the biggest feather we'd ever seen, so much so that it caught our attention and stopped us. And so and since then, she told me that he travels with me everywhere I go. And so I so believe that. I had a really terrifying incident happen in Memphis last year where I was held at gunpoint and robbed. And anyway, it could have turned out really, really bad, and it didn't. And this whole serendipitous thing happened, and I ended up with my everything but my money and my credit cards back really quickly. And it was just terrifying, but also like I saw the worst and the best of people in like 20 minutes, and it was this crazy time. And she told me, hey, Frank was with you. He wanted you to know that he was there with you, and he travels everywhere with you. And since that's happened in Alaska, everywhere I go, I find feathers. Yeah. And now I don't know if I wasn't aware of them before and he was trying, or now I'm like, hey, Frank. So it's fascinating. And it makes me feel so safe and comfortable.
Do you think that's the purpose of it? Because I always think that there's multiple reasons for it, right? And so it's a wonderful example of how things work at times, or how we choose to believe that things work, right?
Right.
And but I think there's always multiple reasons for it. And so whether it's just a warm feeling that you have, whether it's really him there protecting you and looking out for you, whatever the case may be, I don't think there's a right or a wrong. I think that there's multiple reasons for all of it.
Absolutely. And and I feel like, in Memphis, maybe there was some kind of intervention. I'm not sure, because in that exact night, there were 6 homicides in armed robberies in one night, and I walked away.
Do you want to tell me, are you okay talking about it?
Oh, absolutely.
So tell me the story, what happened?
Yeah, so a girl that I was actually interviewing, and we worked all day filming and doing all of these things. And then she said, do you want to walk down to Beale Street? I'd never been to Memphis. I'd never been to Beale Street. So we walked down to the House of Blues, watched a set, went to dinner, and then we were walking back to the car. And just where we were parked was outside of her business, actually. And they don't have a streetlight. So it was one of those dark places, and we feel like this person was probably actually watching us walk, and they got to a place where, opportunity struck, and they could come for us. So we were walking, and this car pulled up behind us without its headlights on. And as soon as I turned around, I knew something bad was going to happen. And 2 guys jumped out, and then there was a driver too, and they ran up and Laura, who I was with, actually had the keys in her hand. And so she was able to jump in the driver's side door of the car and slam the door. And the guy was just beating on the window with a gun. And the other guy chased me down and just jammed a gun into the back of my head and took my backpack and stuff. He left, and then he came back because he hadn't taken my phone. And so I gave him my phone, and he took off again. He didn't shoot me, So anyway, it was this crazy story. When Laura jumped in the car, as soon as she slammed the door, it locked my door. And I don't know that I could have gotten in the car otherwise. And the police said that if we had they probably would have shot us through the window. So it all just kind of turned out exactly how it was supposed to. And so we called the police, and they came, they took our story. And while we were talking to the police, they got a call, and they're like, hey, we have got a white female kidnapped. And it was like 3 blocks from there. And so one of the cops took off to respond to that. Well, they had my backpack and everything, and they got over to that location, and there was 3 men that were standing on the corner that live in the exact same circumstances that the guys that robbed me did too, but they were good, And so anyway, that car that had robbed me, when they were driving by, threw my backpack out the window, and my wallet flew open and my ID was in there. So by the time the police got there, these 3 had already pulled up my Facebook profile, and they thought I was still in the car, because I guess that's the MO in Memphis now. If they can't get what they want from you, they take you to an ATM. And so these 3 men assumed that I was in the car and called the police. And so they were like, you need to go find, she's in that car. And they had all of my information pulled up and everything. And so the police called back where we were still over doing our report and stuff. And he's like, hey, come over here. We've got your stuff back. And so we drove over, and these 3 men, like I said, who are raised in this exact same rough environment, were so happy that I was alive. One of them started crying. He's like, I'm so happy that you're alive. And, and they brought everything back except for, like I said, the cash and some credit cards. They took my computer, what else, a camera, stuff that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And within minutes, I had my ID back. I had everything that I needed to get home, basically. And so, which I didn't actually go home. I was there for another week and had this marvelous time. But yeah, so when I think about Frankie actually being there in that moment, I think it was more than just for comfort. And I think it was actually, he was my guardian angel.
So how... That's a shitty story. Like, that's a terrible thing to go through.
You know what? It was, but it was, like I said, it was the worst and the best of people in 20 minutes. And so I had a really hard time wallowing in it, because here are these 3 men that I don't even know that are crying because I'm okay. So it was actually really kind of beautiful and terrifying. But yeah, the terrifying part ended really quickly. And now I still communicate with the 3 men that called.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and they have nothing, and they still did the right thing, and they're the good in the world. So,
did you have any after effects of it? Because it's a traumatic experience.
Yes. The thing that makes me the most mad about it is I'm never afraid, and I'm always aware of my surroundings, but I never question people, and I've never passed somebody on the street and then turned around to see if they were turning around. And now I do that, and I hate it. It like makes me furious every time I do it. But it's like, and especially these men that jumped out of the car had hoodies on and sunglasses, and all of the typical, the MO, exactly what you would expect. It was exactly what you'd expect. And now I hate hoodies, for one thing. And I turn around sometimes when I walk.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't like it. So, but other than that, no.
Have you ever thought about, like, did you go through and not necessarily pick apart, but think about, because we were talking about like synchronistic events that happen and things where you're kind of in the right place at the right time. And I talked about how I think there's multiple reasons for everything that happens, right? And multiple, like, just so many different angles that things happen,
right.
Or why things happen. Did you go through and pick apart and try to see like, why did this happen to me? Why was I, there at that time? Had we stayed a little bit longer at the House of Blues, then they would have moved on and gone to somebody else. Or do you know what I mean? There's so many different angles to think about and look at.
Right. And, to be really honest with you, I didn't. The police did. And they told me everything that I did wrong, like wearing a backpack in the city and walking alone at night as two women. And I had on really brightly colored tennis shoes, which is really silly. I didn't even think about it, but they were like, don't do that. Anything that will draw your attention to, and they might know that you have on expensive shoes, just don't. And honestly, my family picked it apart to the high heavens. My dad bought me a pistol, which I refuse to carry because that makes me feel like I'm a victim. So I hid it away. But they picked apart pretty much everything I did. But, at the end of the day, everything I thought about, I came to one conclusion. It was the perfect storm. It could have happened. It doesn't make Memphis bad or more dangerous than anywhere else in the world. I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I was actually really blessed. I walked away with nothing bad, and I met these amazing people that called the police for me and had my back that I don't know, and that's what I expect of people. And it's exactly what happened. So,
yeah, but when I say you don't find that very often, I think we don't hear about that very often. I think that for the most part, that stuff happens on a regular basis. Not terrible things for people getting, held at gunpoint, but I think inherently people are good.
I do believe that inherently people are good. And I think, you had asked me if I ever feel in touch. I think intuitively, if there is somebody that has bad intentions, I think you can feel it. And I'm sure you find that in your travels too. I stay away from people that give me that feeling. And so I always feel very comfortable, like in my surroundings. And I've had a couple experiences where I'll walk in someplace and, just say into a hotel and notice there's not a lot of people staying there, and I won't get a good feeling about the person that's checking you in, and and I don't stay. It's simple as that. I just leave. And that doesn't happen very often. Most of the time you feel so welcome and like kind of taken in that, yeah, I agree. We don't hear enough about the good things that happen because I can't say it enough. In 20 minutes, I saw the worst of people. And it's not even that, because in a way, it made me realize that how lucky I am because I've never felt that desperate. I've never been in a situation where I felt like I had to take something from somebody to survive. Never. And that's a blessing. And they were young. They were kids, and so it made me grateful that I've never known that. My kids have never known that. Most people that I know have never known that situation where that's how you felt like you had to do,
Did they end up catching those guys?
No. You know what? And I did 3 lineups while I was there. It was dark. They had hoodies on, sunglasses. I could rule people out because of height. But other than that, no.
Yeah,
no.
it's so hard.
So hard. Yeah. And and it was, besides that, it was quick. They came up behind me. So it was more, if they had talked, it might've made a difference, but no. And you know what? They must've needed that $800 more than me. So I hope they bought their kids shoes with it.
It's like the rippling effect,
exactly.
Right? We always think, I always think about that where, those guys came and you had an interactive experience with them, like on an energetics level, right?
Right.
And maybe because they singled you out and attacked you guys, they didn't attack somebody else.
Exactly.
And saved that person's life.
Exactly.
Or maybe, they put them back 15 minutes later in their schedule or whatever for their evening, and they avoided a car accident or whatever the case may be. I love kind of going down that rabbit hole of all those possibilities, but at the end of the day, it's like, who knows, right?
Right. But I did think about that. Like, I thought about, what if it had been somebody younger? What if it had been somebody that tried to fight back? What if I had been able to get in that car door and then they would have shot us? What if, because nothing bad came of it for me. Like, and who knows what the next person, if they had, like, somebody had tried to fight back, but which I thought I would, though.
Do you feel like you handled yourself well?
I didn't think so until I talked to the police. Like, I thought I would resist, and I did not. I was just like, take it, take whatever you want, give him, oh, you want my shoes, whatever, So I did not react how I thought I would react. I've taken a lot of self-defense classes and all of this stuff. So I thought I'd be prepared to protect myself. But after talking to the police, I did protect myself by doing none of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't give them a reason to shoot me. And so if I could tell anybody that, that's what I would tell them now. Don't. Just give them what they're asking for. None of it's not replaceable.
Yeah, especially when it just comes to property.
Right.
Like, it's one thing if they're trying to grab you and throw you in the back of the car or something like that. But if it's just property, yeah, give it to them.
Absolutely. And again, serendipitous thing about this is the next day I was interviewing 2 people for HGTV. They flip houses in Memphis, 2 gentlemen. And I was running late because they took my phone. They took... I had to get some stuff done before I could go to the interview. So I called him and said, hey, I had this really weird thing happen last night, because weirdly, it was kind of embarrassing to me. Like, oh yeah, I was held at gunpoint. Weird. So I called him and said, I'm running late. And I went to Verizon store and I got a new phone, and I ran out there, and they were like, so what was it that happened? And I was telling them, and one of the gentlemen had the exact same thing happen to him the year before, except that he didn't have any cash on him. They threw him in the car, took him. He couldn't get his ATM card to work, and they shot him. And he was actually in the hospital for a month. And so he had this story, and I'm like, oh my, I'm
so crazy, huh?
Lucky. Yeah. So
it makes
lucky.
me think too, because I always like to question the things that I believe or the things that I think.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's also the possibility that it's so random, right? Where it's not necessarily beautiful, synchronistic, serendipitous things that the universe lines up for us.
Right.
It's just crazy chaos.
Right.
Where it could,
Right.
do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it was just happenstance that you didn't get shot, or that these people did do this, or
Right.
whatever the case may be.
Right, which could very well be, and I really choose not to believe. Like, I just so believe that everything lines up for whatever reason it is,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think as humans, I think we do that where we want to believe in something that makes us feel good at the end of the day, that gives us that warm, fuzzy feeling.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, even if that's just the sole purpose of it.
Right.
Or maybe it is possibly chaos and just random happenstance, but we have put this spin on it so that we feel better at the end of the day. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Right.
And
that could very well be.
Yeah, I don't believe that. I think it's definitely all intertwined and interconnected, and that things happen for a reason.
Right.
So that was a year ago.
It was October 10th. Yeah.
Of last year.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there's, I don't know why we don't need to harp on it
Oh,
anymore,
no, it's
but
okay.
do you feel like there's, because I think there's ramifications or multiple things that will stem from one occurrence or one event. Like, even now where, so much time has passed, do you still feel like there's things that, well, you mentioned that, like, now you still, every now and then you catch yourself looking behind you or checking for things.
Right. Yeah. If somebody passes me on the sidewalk even, and I walk or run every day. And so I'm always used to just being out alone. And I've never had a moment that I felt like when somebody walked by me, I had to turn around to make sure they weren't turning around and following me. And, it's getting better. It's getting a lot better. And I've been trying really, really hard not to automatically stereotype the people that remind me of the person who did it, because it was that was random, And so on one hand, I do believe it was random, because I believe it was just the perfect storm, and there's no way you can get around that. And, because people worry about you when you travel alone, and I 100% understand that. And I'm always like, I'm fine, nothing's going to happen. And then something like this happens and you're like, I don't want to call home and tell them. In fact, the police were like, hey, we're going to have to call somebody at home before we take you to the hotel, because there's no way we're just dropping you off without somebody knowing. And I'm like, oh God, here we go.
It's like everybody's worst case scenario.
Absolutely. And especially for my kids, but they also understand, and like my daughter's first response was, Mom, you know what, how sad for that boy, like how sad for him that he doesn't have another means to provide for himself. And so I was proud of them. I was just like, okay, they get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So although they were very frustrated and worried, they also understood that it was random. It was a perfect storm. I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and it could have happened in my hometown. It could have happened when I was running. It could have happened anywhere. So
Yeah, I don't think it was random. I think it happened for a reason.
it was, but Frank was there, so
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
And that's a cool thing.
There's no doubt in my mind, and she specifically said that. She said he was with you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm, for whatever reason, I'd never thought about Frank. I always knew like my grandma was with me, and I knew, but now I know, and that's so cool that I had no idea.
Did you kind of have that intuitive, connected feeling your whole entire life? Like, do you remember things from your childhood or growing up, or?
Yes, and I can remember after my grandmother passed, always feeling like mostly having dreams about her all the time, which I still do.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always I guess intuitively known that it wasn't a dream. Like it was a communication, and it was always just checking in. And, she was my best friend when I was little. And so it made sense to me that, I would still talk to her, and so, and I've also always felt very connected with people, like kind of intuitively. Well, and this is going to sound really random now, but I've always seen people in color. And so I don't mean like this bright yellow person, but I've always when I meet somebody and just immediately associated them with a color. And there's colors that I don't know what it means to anybody else. I don't know what that whole thing means. I know what it means to me. And I don't think it's any different than a gut feeling. It's just how I see it. And so I've always felt like I knew who I'd work best with just by that.
Based off of the color. Is it something that you visually would see on somebody, or is it more like a thought or an impression that comes?
You know what? It's really, really hard to describe, because I wouldn't say that it's an aura, because that seems really weird, but it's an automatic yellow. Yep, yellow, that's a yellow person. And so it's always been really hard to describe. When I would tell my mom that, like, hey, Mom, there's that lady, she's the orange lady. And my mom would be like, what are you talking about? But, and like I said, it's no different than anybody else's gut feeling, but it's just how I've always done it, So I think I've always kind of felt like I knew who fit into my tribe by that. And it's played out pretty much.
Is there a color that, like, when it pops up on somebody or when you come across it, that you're like, I'm good. Like, I
Yes.
don't really need association. I don't really need to.
Yeah.
What
There
color?
is red.
Red.
Yep. It's just a color that, for me, it's, and again, I don't know what those colors mean. And I know there's a bunch of books out that you can read.
Well, what do they mean to you? Like,
That's all it matters, is what it means to me. So red is just a color that, for whatever reason, and it's not that I think those are bad people. They're people that are toxic for me. Mm-hmm. And it's played out enough that I believe it now, but okay. The flip side of that is I've also met people that are like red, yellow, and they're some of my favorite people. I just know to stick away from them when they're having a red day, so I don't think anybody's any one thing.
Yeah.
But that's my color that really is toxic for me.
Like, I'm trying do the best that you can to describe it, okay? Because when it comes to the space of what you're talking about now and
Mm-hmm.
seeing, like, super familiar, right? Like, you're totally, it's wonderful that we're talking about it.
Right.
But is it a physical thing that you see? Is it in your mind's eye? Is it, because you know how sometimes when we think thoughts, a lot of times we see words in our head.
Right,
where,
absolutely.
like, if I tell you to think of an elephant, you'll visually see an elephant, but then sometimes you see the word itself.
Right.
So how is it? Like, is it?
It's in my head, but it's a visual, it's visual to me, but it's definitely in my head. It's not like I look at you and see a blue aura like floating around you, or you're not like a Smurf. It's just I look at you and like blue, and so, and I see the color blue, but I don't, it's in my head. It's not around you.
Okay.
So, and that's been forever.
So, like, in your imagination, even though,
Yeah.
when I say imagination, I think our imagination is how we interpret energy.
Right.
And
Exactly.
I think that's how it comes through and everything like that. And we can imagine things and we can create things in our imagination, right?
Yeah.
But then I think that's also the tool that we use to interpret energy is our imagination.
Exactly.
Just to kind of make it simple.
And that's what it is to me. It's energy, but it's an energy to me that's a color. And
you've always had that.
always.
And have you always, like, did you ever have a point where you had to kind of figure out what the hell it was? Or did you always just kind of know? And
Yes. You know what? I don't think I ever thought about what it meant, because again, it just felt like a gut feeling to me until I had kids. Mm-hmm. And I think that then it meant something to me because my children aren't the same color, so I'm like, oh my gosh, what does that mean to me? Like, because I don't love one of my kids more than the other kid. So what does that mean? None of them are red, by the way. So that's a good thing. But, so I started kind of analyzing it at that point and started like trying to put people in more of a group. Like if I see somebody purple, I know they're going to challenge me. I know it's going to be somebody that's going to, and usually really, really intelligent, maybe borderline arrogant, and they're going to challenge me. They're going to try to make my life more difficult than it has to be, in some way. And
push some buttons and some boundaries and things.
Right. So now I just know. It's like knowing that you're dealing with, it's not a wolf in sheep's clothing anymore. You just know you're dealing with a wolf, and it makes my life easier. You just look at them and you go, oh, okay. So I'm going to deal with this yellow person who might actually even sugarcoat stuff for me a little bit, but I'll know it's being sugarcoated. And again, it's no different than anybody else's gut feeling or intuition. It's just how I see it. And so not till I was an adult did I actually start trying to, put people in a group like, oh yeah, well that person was purple and this person was purple. So maybe purples are going to give me a run for my money.
Kind of draw correlation with it, right?
Yep.
I find that really, really fascinating. Like, I think it's a wonderful skill. I think it's neat that you've had it your whole life. I think it's neat that you kind of, did you ever go through a time period where you questioned it? Like, where you're like, what is this? Why do I have this thing? Or did you just kind of accept that it was part of it? Because it's definitely a thing, sure. It's not.
It is.
Do you know what I mean? It's not like just, it's just happened. Like, you're intuitively connected to the universe and energy, and you have the ability to interpret it outwardly so that when you come across and interact with people, you have a very good radar that pops up and you can know instinctively whether or not this is a good thing or a bad thing.
And I don't know that I ever questioned it, especially growing up, because I didn't know it was any different than anybody else. And I never talked about it. It was just like, I kind of assumed if I told my mom, the orange lady, that I thought she'd know, that orange lady. And so again, I didn't really think about it. But I also think now that that's why I have jobs with people. Like, it's a people thing because I feel like it's given me tools to deal with people differently. Like, I know how to approach it if I see something. And as far as ever really questioning it, I've actually questioned people before. Like, I'll meet somebody that I think is red and then be kind of fooled for a minute. It's always come back to bite me in the ass every time. If I let my guard down and think, oh, you know what, I misinterpreted them right out of the gate. It's like I said, it's come back to bite me in the ass every time.
Is it something that you have to turn on?
No.
Or is it just something that
it just happens? And the only thing is, I'm not walking through a mall or like a large group of people going orange, yellow, red, blue. It's never like that. It's always a one-on-one thing. Like, if I make eye contact with somebody, I get a sense. And especially after a conversation, because a lot of times this sounds really weird, but there's a lot of tan people in the world. And I think it's because they don't communicate with people enough to develop an aura, a color, and so sometimes those are the people that you're like, I don't know who they are yet, but if you get to know them, then. But there's a lot of people like that in the world, and
maybe
that's what I say.
Like their shield or something, where
exactly.
they're so protected and
or unheard, and so that's the funny part about, like I said, I run into all these people that, I'm interviewing like mountain men. They don't have cell phones, they don't have social media, they don't have televisions, they don't, they've lived completely these very isolated lives, and many of them, when I meet them, I'm like, I don't know what they are. I think if they were inherently bad, I would see that right out of the gate. But it's just this. I just think they're unheard, and so they don't really know who they are yet. And so when they start talking, and then generally you can pick up something. Go, oh my gosh, they were hidden.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot of people in the world too that are they're tan. You can talk to them forever and you're like, I don't know. Just they're tan.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you have that you would describe? And maybe you don't describe that, because do I think that's a gift? Yes. But I don't think that I think everybody has that gift.
I do too.
I think that's just the way that yours manifests. And I
Right.
think it's incredible that you just accept it and use it and move through. Do you know what I mean? Because
Right.
you probably wouldn't necessarily, because it would be very easy for me to describe you as somebody who's a natural empath, intuitively connected, sees color and energy. Do you know what I mean? Like there's all these things and ways that I would describe you to a certain extent.
Right.
But you may not necessarily describe yourself that way. Like for you, it's just me. This is just what I do, and this is just how I see things.
Right. Yeah, and to me, I think that I think it is. I think everybody has it, and some people would call it their gut instinct or their whatever, just feelings. And I think for whatever reason, that's how mine manifested. And I don't think I ever tried to shut it. And I think that might be the difference. Is I think people close their minds to it, and I just for whatever reason I never did, because I've always just felt like it was. I didn't know any different, I guess.
Have you ever tried to do more with it?
No. Mm-mm.
Have you ever had that thought?
No, you know what? I really haven't. It's funny because my daughters, I've got 2 daughters that are both very intuitive. Like my youngest daughter, okay, this is a crazy story. So she was 3 months premature. She was 1 pound, 14 ounces when she was born. And in her incubator, she was in Great Falls, Montana for 3 months. And in Butte, Montana, there's a statue. It's called Our Lady of the Rockies. And it was a tribute to a gentleman's wife who was passing away. He said, if you will save her, I will resurrect this monument as a tribute to the lady of, the Mother Mary. And so he did. And it's this huge statue now that's on the hill in Butte. And we had, along with other things, there was a picture of that in her incubator. And just because it felt like, somebody watching over her. And when she was old enough to speak, we were at one of the grandparents' house for Easter, and they had a statue of Our Lady of the Rockies on their china cabinet. And she turned around and called it Mama, and continued to call it Mama. Hello, Mama. Hi, Mama. Talking to this statue. And during the course of her life, she had several times where we were at a park, and it was for my husband's class reunion, and they had this huge blow-up obstacle course, and she was just under 3. She had just climbed in, and the wind picked it up and tossed it, and it stuck in the top of a tree and slapped down and threw the kids out of it. And I was freaking out because she didn't fall out. I couldn't find her anywhere. And she came running across the park. I was like, oh my God, Haley, how did you get out? And she said, Grandma Alice took me. Grandma Alice had been dead for like 2 years. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff. And for a long time, Haley would talk about the little girl who was with her that danced all the time. And, it never frightened me. It freaked my husband out. But, and then she shut it down for a while. She said that she put the little girl, she moved her out of her bedroom, and, she did all of this stuff. And so now I can watch Haley opening back up, and I believe that she can probably do more with it than I can. I think that I kind of reached my capacity for what I have. I mean, it serves me well. I don't know that I have the capacity to serve others with it. I feel like she might. Yeah.
You think you've reached your capacity for things?
In
regards to that?
With that. And maybe it's just because that's what I'm comfortable with.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. But I feel like she has, and she also went into massage therapy now. So it's kind of that, kind of a touch thing. And, people will describe like, yeah, when she gives you a massage, it's warm, and so I feel like that's her calling. And, like mine, like I said, it serves me well, but I don't know even what my colors would mean to somebody else. And so I don't like try to ever.
Yeah, it's not like you could write a book and say, when you see red, this means it's bad. When you see green, it means this.
Right. And I would never even feel comfortable advising somebody else like, hey, that person's red. You should stay away because that's my stuff. It's not theirs. So, so I feel like I'm really, really blessed with that because I think it serves me well, but I don't know that it's a gift for beyond that.
Do you have anything else? Like you talk about being connected to past loved ones and being able to kind of talk and communicate and receive information, and then like super connected you are because you're doing a lot of cool shit. It makes me really happy that that we're talking because it's good stuff.
Well, thank you. I am too. And no, I think really that's it. I mean, I've always talked to my loved ones or people that pass, like like I said, my friend's son who he died very tragically, and I feel like I sometimes, not only do I feel like I can talk to him, but sometimes I'll see somebody turn around and walk away from me, and I'll be like, whoa, that was Keegan.
Yeah.
And, so stuff like that. And again, it serves me. So maybe I'm a narcissistic in my, it's always about serving me. So I feel really blessed about stuff like that. And I think it's always been such a part of my life. I never think beyond that. It's just it's a blessing.
Would you say that you ever see aura, or auras, I should say?
I don't know, because I've often wondered if color is an aura, but again, I don't know what that means to anybody else. So I don't know. What is an aura? Do you see auras? Is it just their energy?
I think this is my take on it, right? This is my my belief or my perception or my thoughts on it. I think it is just energy. I think it's just their outward energy. I think your aura resonates or emanates from inside of you, and I think it takes on a color or a tone or a shade. But I think it's all like the way that you describe, where these colors are just for me. This is my interpretation of it, and this is what I mean. So if I were to look at somebody and see their aura, I might see it as a green or a purple or some shade or tone of that. But I have to learn what those colors mean to me, because I'm seeing them through my lens and through my filters and through my interpretation. And so I think when people have, do you know what I mean? If somebody says, well, when you see a purple aura, it means this, or
Right.
it means that their crown chakra is wide open and they're super connected to the divine light of blah, 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 blah.
Right.
I think that when I see purple, it means something different than when somebody else sees purple.
Right.
But when I have seen, or when I do see, because if I focus a lot and if I try to set forth that intention, then I can start to see it very clearly. But it's not something that I just walk around and see on a regular basis. I kind of have to bring awareness to it. And there is times where it'll catch me out of nowhere, kind of surprise me for some reason. And then I kind of sit there for a minute like, okay, why am I seeing this, or why am I seeing that color, or whatever the case may be. But a lot of times when I see somebody's aura, or when I see energy, it doesn't necessarily have a specific tone or color to it. It's more of like, when you see heat on the surface, like on the horizon, like on a hot road or something, you look way down there and you can see heat, and you can see it moving along the surface of the earth or whatever. That's to me what I see most often. If I'm looking for auras or looking for energy, or if something catches my attention,
Right.
That's kind of what it looks like. That's the easiest way to describe it, because it just kind of looks like a disturbance, I guess. And that's probably the wrong word to describe it, because it's not a bad thing. It's just that's
Right.
kind of the way it's clear, but it's not. It's got shape, but it doesn't. It's like
It's more of it chaotic. Some of it's chaotic. Some of it's not. Okay. So when you do see an aura, like a color, is there a color that resonates with you? That's like, do you have a favorite? Do you have like somebody that you just know instinctually we're going to be friends? And do you have a danger?
I don't.
You don't?
No, like I don't have a strong enough, when I say I don't have a strong enough, I don't have enough awareness of that connection, or I've never worked with it enough. It's not like the thing that you're talking about and describing. I think that's an incredibly innate gift that you have. And I think if I were to try to practice or harness, I could get to some point where I could have that.
Right.
But that's not innate in me. That's not how I see energy.
Right.
I feel people more.
Uh-huh.
Do you know what I mean? Where I can definitely feel people
Right.
and how they feel, and whether or not it's going to be, and I can pick up on people's feelings, and kind of where they're at and what they're going through and experiencing and all that kind of stuff. But I don't have color that just pops up. I don't have the ability to just kind of connect. And when I do see auras or colors on people, I don't know what the hell it means. Like I don't have enough experience or enough consistency with it to say, oh, when I see this, then that's what it means, or I need to look out for that, or whatever the case may be.
Right. And that's funny, because I think that's how I spent my whole life. Like I didn't know what it meant. All I knew is that if I met somebody and it was yellow, they're my friend. Straight up, they're my friend. Yellow's my favorite color, and it just became part of like who I am. Like yellow is my thing. And I think part of that was just because of the people that innately were yellow. It just happened. And as far as beyond that, red's always been a danger color. Like I don't even have red clothing. I'm like, no, I don't love red, That's not true. I do have a couple of red things, but generally I just don't do red. It's a thing. But yeah, it wasn't until, like I said, I got older and I had these babies and I'm like, well, that's weird. They're all three, mine and my husband's. How can they be so different? You know, there's one's teal, one's pink, I'm like, how did that even happen? So it wasn't until then that I actually started trying to figure out what it meant to me. Because before it was just a gut instinct, like, oh, well, goodness, look at their green. Like, it didn't occur to me that green was going to be somebody who was going to teach me something, or, so yeah, it's
the people so like your children, for example, obviously they've been in your life for a long time and you're really connected to them.
Yeah.
Have they ever changed colors?
Nope.
Have you ever met or run into anybody that you've had association with long enough to see their color change? Or
like I said, I've met the people before that are either yellow and then they're red, or red and yellow. And actually some of the closest people that I had a boss, actually, well, she was somebody I worked with in real estate who, when I met her, she was very yellow and I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be great. And then it became very red, but then there was this yellow-red thing that happened and I still loved her the same. I just knew. And so then I started wondering if, like, is it a personality thing? Like, is it a disorder? Trying to use a medical diagnosis. Then I'm like, what is that? But it became very clear to me that I could sense where she was before I actually had an interaction with her. I could tell by the way she walked. I could tell by the way she called on the phone. I could tell by the tone in her voice that, whoa, that's this red day, and so I would just limit my interactions during that time, but I still love her the same. So as far as changing completely, no, but I have had other colors incorporated into, but it's always been yellow, red. I've never had somebody be blue, purple, blue, green, so those are the two that ever kind of get mixed together. I have had, like I said, people that at first appear to me and they're kind of tan, then I get to see their color, but mostly, no, it's pretty much holds true.
That's such a neat thing.
Yeah. It really, you know what, that's funny because now I never talk to anybody about this. Now I'm kind of embarrassed, but it is. It's been a blessing in my life because I feel like it gives me a lot of direction.
And would you describe yourself? And I know, we label ourselves certain things. I mean, when we meet people, this is what I do, and this is what I am, and this is, I've got 3 kids, blah blah blah. Like, this is how we describe ourselves. Like, at any point down the line of things that you describe yourself as, would you ever describe yourself as somebody that has this ability, or that this is something that not defines you, but that you, do you know what I mean, have, or that you can tap into?
No.
Why?
I never have. Because again, I just feel like I feel like it's a gift, and I feel like it's no different than you having like a gut instinct about somebody, like feeling, whoop, danger, or, oh my God, they're going to be my friend for life. And for whatever reason in my mind, it's just always shown as a color. And so I don't feel like describing myself as somebody who has a strong gut instinct is any, so I guess I've never thought about it.
Yeah.
It's always just been very much a part of who I am. I mean, I buy clothing based on it, just things that make me feel good. I always have yellow flowers in my house because it makes me feel good. It's just a thing that is, again, it's narcissistic, intuitive. It serves me.
Do you know what yellow, when it comes to chakras, do you know what yellow is associated with most often or most typically?
No.
It's going to be your solar plexus. So it's kind of the center of your body, your gut. That's, like when you talk about your gut instinct or something like that. And so if I was going to step outside, and not step outside, like go outside, but if I'm going to step outside of this conversation for a moment and just listen to what you're talking about and what you're describing, yellow is your favorite color. So you're going to be most connected to your gut and to your, do you know what I mean? That's going to be your strongest chakra in a sense.
Well, and I love to eat, so I think it's true.
And then red is most associated with the root chakra. And this is the same thing where
what's that?
So typically, as far as like where it's generally not ideally, but most generally focused in your body is going to be like at the lower base of your spine. It's in regards to like being grounded and connected, and kind of sometimes like survival, fight or flight to a certain extent, and just kind of how you feel based in security in the world and in your life and things like that. There's a lot of other things that you can draw from it. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And so I think it's really fascinating that those, because those two they're not like polar opposites. Like polar opposites would be your root chakra and your crown chakra.
Right.
Two opposite ends of your body. Typically, one's based here on earth and the, rooting in Mother Nature and everything like that. And your crown chakra is your connection to the divine, or whatever we want to call it.
And what color is that?
Typically, it's like a violet or a purple.
Oh, okay.
And so I think it's really fascinating that you've got yellow and red. And this is my interpretation or take on chakra. Like chakras have been around forever and a day, right?
Right.
And so if you're listening and you think that red is associated with something else, that doesn't mean you're wrong or that I'm wrong or that you're right. It's just all whatever you take from it.
Right.
But for me personally, I think it's really fascinating that you have yellow and red, because those two are also chakras that are typically work closely with one another and intertwined. And so when you talk about seeing somebody that's red and knowing kind of immediately that you're done, and then yellow being your favorite color and the strongest, like to me, that's your shadow and that's your light. And so the people that stand out red to you, my guess is, I don't know how to explain it. Like in my head, I'm trying to put the thought together and put it into words, but it's like, there's a certain amount of that too, that probably, yes, that you're not going to get along well with those people and that you kind of need to steer clear of it. But my guess is that they're probably going to be, like, you could probably learn a lot from red people.
Right. And I have, like I said, the person that I worked with in real estate that was this red yellow person, to this day, I mean, there are times when, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was the most difficult time in my life. Every day I will tell you that I've never learned more in my life than I did with my time with this person. I mean, taught me so much about everything, including myself, and also about how not to be sometimes, so no, I would say it was probably one of the people that taught me the most out of anybody I've ever met. I mean, so much so that it sticks with me. I mean, she resonated in my life. And when I see her now, I'm still really grateful to see her. So
that's good.
Yeah.
That's very, very cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. And so when you see people and you get like an intuitive feeling about them, how do you see it? Just energy?
Like for me to physically see things, like outwardly rather than in my imagination or like in my mind's eye. For me to physically see things on people or around or in the space of whatever the heck it is that I'm doing, I have to focus a lot. I have to bring a lot of awareness to it. I have to get really quiet and connected to that space. But as far as like, I would say like my natural ability, like you have that natural ability to see color on people. I think I feel way more naturally. That's probably like my strong suit, where I can be moving throughout my day. Same thing, like if I'm walking through a crowded mall, I don't get sensations of how people are feeling, or do you know what I mean? It's not like suddenly I walk by somebody and can tell what they're thinking or if they're having a bad day. But if I'm interacting with people, and then more importantly, because that's kind of an innate thing that happens. But then if I bring awareness to it, then it gets really strong, where I can really connect to people and really kind of gauge and feel where they're at and what they're experiencing and what they're going through. Almost to the point sometimes where it feels like not like I can see their thoughts or read their minds or anything like that, but I can see the trajectory of their thought and their path. And does that kind of make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's kind of abstract, but it's, so for me, like I said, if I have to see things or if I see things, I have to get real quiet unless it's out of the blue. Like, do you know what I mean? There's plenty of times where I'll just see shit. Right. But that's random. And do you know what I mean? I think sometimes, and when
is it frightening?
No, not for me.
No.
I don't get afraid of it, but it's because I have I don't think there's anything bad. And so I'm okay when I see scary shit. Sometimes it might jolt me and I might have to take a minute and remind myself that there's not anything bad. Right. Based off of what I think and what I believe. But in the long run, or in the end, it doesn't frighten me or anything like that. But when I do see things, I have to use that as the reminder of like, okay, what am I feeling? If I see something or, I have some sort of thing that catches the corner of my eye or something like that, I'll bring awareness to it, but then I always go back to what am I feeling? Why is that now connected to what I'm feeling? Like, what is it that I'm missing? Do you know what I mean? So I kind of go to my thought process and what I'm feeling and things like that.
But in your case, it got to the point where you felt like you had to serve other people with it. Is that true?
I think I've always wanted to serve other people. I've always wanted to help people. Like I really, really like helping people in their life, whatever the case may be. Like when it comes to this podcast, one of the things that I really like is that somebody out there in the world gets to listen, and whether it's something that I said or something that you said, they're going to walk away and have a thought or something that resonates and sticks with them throughout their day or for their week, or maybe it's something drastic, or we have put pieces together for them in the puzzle of their life at this exact moment when they listen to this podcast that helps them move forward in life. So I like that aspect of helping people in that regard. And then actually getting to work with people or talk with people or helping them more directly. I really, really like that. And that's something that, I've done a bunch of different things in a bunch of different ways and things like that. But at the end of the day, like that's something that I feel very, very happy about and proud about when I get to do that kind of stuff.
So can you see the energy of people that are completely closed to it, that don't believe?
Like don't believe in regards to energy?
Yeah. That don't believe in regards to what you do.
Yes. And I mean, you can pick up on people. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't take long talking to somebody before you can sense whether they're not really tuned in and listening to you.
Right.
And it may be because they, I don't talk to everybody about colors and auras and energy and chakras and everything like that.
Nor do I.
But sometimes when conversations start going in that direction, then you can pick up on whether or not they're open to it or whether they're closed to it.
Right.
And sometimes it's physical cues, it's body language, it's demeanor, it's the way that they're, communicating with you. But a lot of times too, you can just tell by the way people feel. But I think that, more often than not, the people that don't, whether they're not open to it or whether they don't believe it, I think those people typically are sad, closed off people in general, not just in the space of energy in the universe or, do you know what I mean, spirituality. Right. They're just really closed. They're probably not necessarily tan people, but like people that are really closed off, not happy, kind of miserable inside. And do you know what I mean? Those are the people I like to help, but they're really, really hard.
But do you get the opportunity to actually change their mindset sometimes?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Sometimes I think so. But I think regardless of, I think everything that happens that interacts between two people. So like you and I sitting here talking and having this, conversation, there's things that you might resonate and connect with a week from now or 6 months from now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for
and
sure.
It may be something that I said. It may be you thinking back to this experience and even just something that happened during the time period of us sitting here talking stands out and then helps you at whatever point you're at in your life 6 months down the road.
Right.
And so I think that that's how we influence and affect one another, where I may not necessarily change somebody's mind or my damn throat. But I think you exchange thoughts in a sense. You exchange energy where, do you know what I mean? I'm not looking to change anybody's mind. I'm not looking to make them suddenly believe in energy is love in the universe and everything like that.
Right.
But if there's some aspect of their mind that gets sparked or turned on, do you know what I mean? Right. Some little light switch that, eventually they move into that room and open it up more, and then they get to decide what's in that space.
That's a gift to give somebody, to me. I mean, that's the biggest gift. But so are you traveling around? Like, how are you choosing where to go to do your podcast?
Most of the time,
boots on the ground.
Sometimes I don't travel a lot to do the podcast. A lot of times it's just at home and interviews there. And we do a lot of like interviews on Skype and things like that. When I do travel, it's for work. And then I bring the podcast along and try to, whether I reach out ahead of time and try to find people or, you know what I mean, things like that. But It's fun.
It's so fun.
It's way fun.
This was a fun day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never get to do this. Nobody asks me questions.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And then you guys have a ton of shows out there and a lot of things and
We
things
do.
that you do.
Yeah, we do a ton of work with all the major networks. Basically, we do work with History Channel and Nat Geo, Animal Planet, Discovery Channel, HGTV, DIY, food, travel. So just kind of run the gamut of everything, and it makes my life so fun.
Very cool.
Yeah.
What's the website for Warm Springs?
WarmSpringsProductions.com. WarmSpringsProductions.com.
Excellent.
Yeah, and we're based in Montana. We have our main headquarters is in Missoula, Montana. We have a satellite office here in Manhattan, and then we have freelancers and crews out all over the country and sometimes all over the world. So,
Very neat.
it's a cool situation to be in. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Craig. It was
I
good to see
appreciate
you.
it. Good to see you too. And everybody go out and have a beautiful, beautiful, wonderful day.
It's not like I look at you and see a blue aura like floating around you, or you're not like a Smurf. I think intuitively, if there is somebody that has bad intentions, I think you can feel it. I just so believe that everything lines up for whatever reason it is, The biggest surprise to me is how people want to tell you their story.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the episode. As always, share the podcast with somebody and let them too bask in all the wonderful things that we talk about and benefit from all these amazing guests. And we'd love to hear from you. Reach out, contact us. Let me know what you like, what you don't like, what you want to hear more of on the podcast, or any questions you may have for me as well. I'd be happy to answer anything that you may have. But much love, everybody. Go have a wonderful day.